Welcome to Presence, a global conversation for a new earth, with hosts Doug King and Cody Deese.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Presence and welcome to 2021. It's a new year. We're ready to crank it up and get going. I am Doug King, and I am solo today. My partner Cody will be joining me in future episodes, but today I am finishing up the Trinity while Cody is otherwise occupied and a very, very busy man at this time. But so glad that you're starting the year with us, and we're going to take on the final episode of the Trinity. But stay watching for the next newsletter, because I think, as I indicated before, we're going to start a new series after this on science and spirituality. I'm very excited for this series that we're about to crank up. And this series will begin with Joe Mastroleo, who's author of a new book entitled The Ambient Christ. The Ambient Christ. I'm going to encourage you in a newsletter, I'll have the title of this book, to buy the book and read it, so you'll get the most out of this science and spirituality series of episodes. So stay tuned for all that. A lot of great things happening with Presence, and some more great news that we will be able to release soon. Today we're going to focus on the Trinity final episode and why this concept handed down to us from the Holy Roman Empire, a concept that worked well in the traditional blue meme age 2,000 years ago, is now being seen to be very challenging and, in fact, unworkable for many. And I think as we take an integral approach to theology, we're going to continue to see the appropriate role and function of Christ and Christology, and that will be the emphasis of my last discussion on the Trinity. Certainly not exhaustive, but I certainly think it lays out the integral principles that we're using in an entire approach to the entire narrative, where everything is interconnected and fits together in a single unified story. So when we're talking about the Trinity, we're talking typically Jesus of Nazareth, the individual. Jesus, the one who is God in every sense, fully God, fully human. But an integral approach, as we've seen in other discussions, relies on an understanding of the quadrants. The quadrants that we've talked about in the past are representative in the upper two quadrants of the individual, and the lower two quadrants, the collective. And we must, to understand who we are, to understand our own existence on this planet, we must understand ourselves as both an individual, but I'm also part of a collective. No man is an island. We are relational, and relationships define us. And our individual understandings and worldviews affect who we are in collectives. So quickly, let's look at this aspect and compare it with the Trinity. In the integral approach to social studies regarding human existence, the upper left quadrant would be a quadrant we would label for the individual. And so with regard to God, our stance relationship to God, the individual would represent an I model. In the lower collective quadrants, in the lower left quadrant, that is the we space. We move from I to we. And in the we space, we now find the I, thou model of our human existence. So there's I, thou, and in the right-hand quadrants, that's the it, its quadrants. So in the right-hand side, it's I, it. So we're I, thou, I, it. In the I frame for the individual, this would be Jesus modeling for me that the Father and I are one. This is showing that in my essence, I am of, I am that I am, therefore I am. My essence is amness. I myself, amness being connectivity with that which is one. And so this is an emphasis on the Father and I are one. If I'm a reductionist and I stop here, it would be very easy for me to say that in the I space, end of story, Jesus is God in every way. However, to take an integral approach, we have to go to the I thou space. In the I thou space, it is the son to father. Or, of course, we could say daughter, mother. What Jesus is teaching is the relational aspect of the human from using the metaphor of child parent, I thou. So this would bring us to a viewpoint known as panentheism or panentheism, where God is all in all and yet above all. So the all in allness of God includes me and all other humans on this planet. And this, as individuals, we're experiencing God in the I space. I am of, I am that I am. Therefore, I am. And in the God is all in all, yet above all, in that above all understanding, that is the I thou, our father or mother. And in this case, Jesus is modeling what it means for me to be in relationship to God as the ultimate transcendent, one and only source of all that is. In the I, it space, the all in allness of God is therefore my all in allness. I am one with all. I am one with the physiosphere. I am one with the biosphere. I am one with environment, eco. I am one with nature, the animal kingdom, and on we go. These are three aspects of the human that are modeled by Jesus, not just the I space, the Father and I are one, which then you would interpret as the very same thing and end of story. But we are one in the sense that we are of that essence, that spirit, which identifies our essence, our identity. So one of the things I emphasize when I'm talking to folks about this is this is not denigrating Jesus regarding deity, but it's rather challenging us regarding our deity. Jesus was servant of God's message. He makes this clear. He talks about it all the time, that he was simply a servant. God was master, and Jesus was a servant of the message. And the message that Jesus was proclaiming to all of us was that we ourselves, in our essence, our deity. I've had people say to me and send me emails, I appreciate that. And by the way, I respect everyone's viewpoint, and I'm not here to engage in debates with anybody about their page number or the way they're seeing things. I'm simply bringing this up to make a further point about an integral approach to Christology. That Christology must include all aspects of the integral frames that I previously discussed. And the emails I get are typically something like, I've heard rumors that your dad doesn't believe in the deity of Jesus. Or, wow, I'm listening to your podcast and I can't believe you do not believe in the deity of Jesus. Well, this in fact is not correct. What Dad was teaching and what I also am presenting here using an integral approach is that people who make Christology a religion are rejecting the message of Jesus regarding deity. People who make Christology a religion are rejecting the message of Jesus regarding deity, that we are all the breath of God. We are all in his, her, its image. That is the message that has been rejected. The human, back through many of the centuries past, has been presented as such a worm as I, the unworthy. God is in the heavens and I'm down here, and there is this great separation, and I do my best day in and day out to please that God. And actually, I've had conversations with people where I bring up that we are deity, and boy, whew, that really freaks some people out because egoically they have been trained to believe that they cannot in their essence themselves be deity. And yet this is why God sent Jesus as we look at the role and function of Christology. Now, a second point that I want to include here as I wrap up this series is remembering the role and function of Christology. Christology is Christ as individual, but also Christ as body. You can't talk about Christology in terms of just Jesus of Nazareth. If you're going to talk Christology, yes, Jesus was the Christ as individual, but the body was Christ as collective. Whatever the nature of Jesus the individual was, Christ, that same nature must be the nature of the body Christ. Whatever deity I want to ascribe to Jesus the individual or Christ as individual, that same deity has to be ascribed to body Christ, or the nature of the head is different than the nature of the body. And that is not an integral approach. I've said many times in past podcasts, you have a real problem in life when you attempt to separate the head from the body. In fact, Jesus was so big on our oneness with God and with him and with all things that he entered it into his very prayer life. Jesus prayed to God that he and the disciples could be one, just as he was one with the Father, the same oneness. The oneness is that essence that relates to the God that is yet above all as the source of our identity. So what's happening here is we're beginning to see that the problem is not the deity of Christ. The problem is our very own nature. And it is time for us to begin to have conversations, that's our position, for a new earth. And to have a new earth, we must first see ourselves as new creatures. Paul stressed this over and over again, that the Christ work, the work of Jesus, the individual, was to bring us into seeing ourselves differently. When you see yourself differently, you become a new person, we would say. Paul says a new creature in a new creation. And so this idea of the deity of Jesus has a transform effect. And that's the role and function that we've said in many podcasts and in our Venn diagram, that Christology represents transformation. That is the role and function of Jesus. As one theologian said, it was not God walking around in a man suit. Rather, the role and function of Christology, of the Christ, of Jesus of Nazareth, was to reveal our nature. Now, was Jesus uniquely divine in a way that I am not and others were not? Yes, in this sense, in the story, in the narrative, there is a role and function played by Jesus of Nazareth as the firstborn one from the dead. If you look at Hebrews chapter 1, for example, Jesus becomes the only begotten Son of God, the only begotten Son via his resurrection from the dead. So Jesus is the firstborn one from the previous worldview that thought of God in separation terms. Jesus is showing through his death to that by his faith, he went to the cross and therefore put to death the self. But 3 days in the tomb, he lay completely helpless of the self to do anything of the self. And the power which raised him from the dead was God and God alone. So Paul emphasizes in Romans 1:1-4, that Jesus died in the flesh, but he was raised in the spirit by the power of God. God is always the source of ultimacy with regard to all things, including, of course, our identity. And this is what Jesus was trying to model. He was trying to model the ways in which we are that with God. And in this sense, then, he was unique. He was uniquely the firstborn one, the foundation of the new creation, the firstborn from the dead, the chosen one of God, who went through the cross, the tomb, and the resurrection as the individual. He was the unique individual who, therefore, performed that role and function. So I'm not saying that Jesus did not have a unique role and function, but I'm saying that his unique role and function was to bring and reveal an understanding to us of our universal God identity that we all share. There is a quote by theologian John Hicks that indicates conversations have been going on for a handful of decades now, going back into the 90s and before. Conversations are really starting to heat up regarding the Trinity. And just to give you a flavor, that this is not a different view that no one has ever considered, let alone what happened before the 4th and 5th centuries at Nicaea and Chalcedon, where the Roman Empire established Jesus as their trump card over all other religions, in essence. But this is a conversation that's happening now. And so Hicks says that neither the intense Christological debates of the centuries leading up to the Council of Chalcedon, nor the renewed Christological debates in the 19th and 20th centuries have succeeded in squaring the circle by making intelligible the claim that one who was genuinely and unambiguously a man was also genuinely and unambiguously God. Hick rejects that notion, as do many others. And I'm only bringing this up to say that the discussion on this side, on Hick's side, is simply this. Hicks says that if Jesus is the transcendent God in every way, Jesus himself is ultimacy, that there is no I, thou, that Jesus himself is ultimacy, then God is in the particularistic religion Christianity, and that is God's exclusive religion. And as the Roman Empire did, so also we could today take Christology and use it exclusively, meaning we could exclude 75% of the world by saying God's religion is Christianity. Now, when I say things like that, the first reaction of people who lean more toward blue meme thinking are saying, what are you saying about all religions? What are you saying about all religions now? What I'm saying is it's not about religion, including Christianity. Religion is simply one way to interpret Christology. When I look through an integral lens, I see a new heaven and earth. And as John said, there's no temple there. There's no religion there. John did not see a cathedral or a mosque or any other type of religious structure or religious institution. For at that time, the new heaven and the new earth had delivered humanity and the sons and daughters of God into the freedom of formlessness, where we are detached from that previous separation thinking. Hick goes on to say that then, once we've established Christology as a particularistic religion, we can even get more exclusive in terms of setting up human judges who determine the saved and the lost. Or, as a religion, we tell the world and show the world that Christ is divided. Paul was wrong. Christ is divided into thousands of denominations. And we know this to be a fact because we pass by those churches with their different denominational signs up anytime we get in the car and go to the grocery store. That's going to happen, right? You see this happening whenever you go somewhere or do anything. Why are we moving this Trinity conversation toward transformation? Well, it should be noted here as I wrap up that it's because people are tired of living their lives according to dogma and creed, to which they must measure up and by which they will be judged by some party somewhere. You see, the Trinity, when Jesus is God, it becomes a confession of faith. It becomes a dogma, a creed. You must accept that. But see, once you do that, that's only the start. And then you go down your denominational confession, and you'll see that in your denomination, there are these creeds, and they become dogma. And we're back and regressing into law as a means by which we attempt to achieve and maintain our identity. The world's tired of it. Does your next door neighbor want to have a discussion with you about the Trinity? Do you get up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. thinking about the Trinity? What the world wants to talk about is transformation. There's stuff in my life. I want it to change. I wish it could be different. It requires transformation. I don't care who the person is. Every single one of us is today thinking about the ways in which we can experience transformation. Transformation in our relationships, our marriages, our parenting, our vocations, our neighborhoods, our friends, our world, our climate, our planet, our politics. We're thinking transformation. And what is Christology? Christology is not a dogma creed argument. Christology is a role and function dedicated purely and solely to transformation. And it is God and God alone that is the transformative power behind it all. There is no transformation unless God and God alone is source, because there was no resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth from the dead, except that God and God alone was its source. The people that come through here at Presence and sit in our homes and that discuss things with Danae and me may or may not know much of anything about, quote, integral theory or even the Bible. We talk to people of all ages about things in their lives that are troubling them and that do need to change and that they want to change. And there hasn't been anyone that's come through here in the years we've lived here that hasn't wanted to talk about the concept of transformation, even though they may not name the word transformation specifically. Everything they're talking to us about are the things in their lives that are under transformation or need transformation. Well, boy, you're talking Christology, whether you even name it, whether you even say it. You're now talking about the role and function of Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth would sit in the living room with all of us and say, yeah, it's always going to be about transformation. And you're always going to have some hard nights where you sit up sweating it out, wondering how you're going to deal with the transformations needed or that are coming or facing you in your life. And that's when Jesus sits in the living room, makes a lot of sense and has meaning. So that's going to conclude my series on the Trinity and what I think and where I find my meaning and what I believe the world is truly, truly hungry for. And that is conversations about transformation, not conversations about creeds and dogmas and particularisms and human doing and measuring up. So that's it for me on the Trinity, and I will look forward to seeing you all next week when we start Science and Spirituality. Hey, thanks for joining me for this series. I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions. Have a great week out there.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions or comments, please contact us at info@presence.tv. You can also visit our website at presence.tv or find us on Facebook. We look forward to hearing from you.